Welcome to the Porn Reboot podcast, where you get practical tips to gaining control over your porn or sex addiction. We help ambitious men end their out-of-control sexual behavior with pornography, sex, and masturbation so that you can maximize your life, perform at your potential, and remain in control in the driver's seat, which is where you have to be in order to gain or maintain the success you want in life. I'm your host, J.K. Emezi, certified sex and porn addiction recovery coach. Welcome to the episode.
Brothers, today I'm going to be sharing a very profound post from a man who went through our Reboot intensive program for almost 3 years. It's profound because this man challenged so many aspects of his life. He challenged so many thoughts and so many beliefs, and finally came out on the other side with a brand new self-image. I would have loved to have him for an interview, but he is a very successful individual. He's very busy, and it's not worth it for both of us to chase each other around for the schedule. So I'm actually going to leave the very powerful post. I'm going to read it out, the very powerful post that he left for brothers in the intensive program. So please pay attention because there's some gold in here. He says, "To all who are reading, thank you to everyone for their support and being part of such a great community. You all know who you are. I'm going to outline my biggest takeaways from facing this behavior more directly over the last 2.5 years. I am 29, turning 30 in December. I also want to give a disclaimer. Everybody's experience is unique, so I will try to characterize some principles here to be a bit more universal to the best of my ability." His takeaways. Number 1, perfectionism. I'd like to start out by saying that my recovery has not turned out how I expected it to. So my first takeaway is define your reboots, but don't perfectionize it. A pattern in many of those with this behavior is their perfectionism. For me, this manifested itself in all or nothing thinking. And he said, look up the term cognitive distortions. And overthinking. That was the other thing, overthinking. Slips would feel like monumental failures. Long streaks of controlled behavior felt like massive achievements. The problem with this is that it was based in the wrong principles and the wrong goal. The goal is not to avoid behavior for certain amounts of time or quit forever. Over time, I personally realized that the goal is to become more aware of how you think and feel, why, and manifest a future where you are the mind that shapes your reality, not your addict. I'll say it again, that the goal is not to stop the behavior. It's to become more aware of who you actually are and what your life purpose and all really is without the distractions and numbing that PMO behavior offers. When you do this, your life changes in all kinds of ways. And due to those changes, your compulsive behavior changes. If you want to come into this for everything else, to stay the same and just stop your compulsive behavior, get ready to be disappointed and frustrated. Come in to be changed in every facet of life necessary, and you'll be grateful and happy you did. This was something that took me a long time to understand. My mind was set on me being involved in the Reboot program to eliminate my compulsive behavior. While that's a part of it, it's not the only thing. I'll touch on that in the next point. It took me close to a year to transition the energy I was using to Reboot from a negative energy of shame and self-hatred to an energy of learning and growth. A tool I found particularly useful here is reframing. An example is, I failed. I messed up. I have to hide this. I will never escape this behavior. I am so... insert negative word here, versus I observe that this situation, environment, way of thinking led to my acting out or acting in a way that I don't desire long term. What do I actually want and need? Reframing helps me to ground myself in the data of the behavior, not in the morality or emotion of the behavior itself or its results. This leads to more awareness surrounding how and why your behavior manifests itself instead of trying to control the behavior alone. Number 2, the necessity of self-care and pushing those boundaries. I did not want to admit to myself that my PMO habit was directly tied to how and why I took care of myself. I have been an avid gym goer, reader, and learner since middle school. These are great habits that formed a good reputation for me and positive, healthy behavior. But it was also when my behavior started progressing to levels out of my control. Once I hit my 20s, my perfectionism pushed me in school and work endeavors. I did things that were good for me to try to be someone who others wanted to emulate and be like. This can only take you so far. Eventually, you have to want to emulate and be like yourself. And behind all of the perfect behavior and image I had was this behavior that I was ashamed of. I didn't want to be me. That crushed me. Despite having and doing all the things I had, this one thing was holding me back. I was scared to face everything else that would have to change in order to actually like myself. Number 3, a willingness to reinvent yourself. If you're like me, this behavior has existed since your early teens, maybe even earlier. Do not expect to successfully change your behavior if you are not willing to accept change in everything else as well. This means career, social group, hobbies, and other activities, substance use, even or especially your closest relationships. One of my biggest fears is that doing what was necessary for my reboot would impact my business and earning potential. Well, guess what? It did. My income went down, but it wasn't initially by choice. The circumstances made it so. My business and industry went through massive changes that bankrupted people I know. I had multiple opportunities to try to hang on to the past and to force things to be the way I wanted them to. Instead, I recognized the opportunity in front of me, and it forced me to reshape my future and myself around behavior that is good for me, good for society, and that I am proud of. Everything changed, and it needed to for me to gain an awareness of my emotions, thoughts, and behavior. This, in turn, led to giant leaps of growth in my reboot and my understanding of myself. JK recently posted something on Facebook that I'll paraphrase here. One of the greatest powers in your reboot will be realizing that changing your compulsive behavior is part of your purpose and mission in life. I'll repeat it. One of the greatest powers in your reboot will be realizing that changing your compulsive sexual behavior is part of your purpose and mission in life. Make no mistake, there will be a clear separation of those who have this behavior under control in healthy ways and those who don't over the next decade. There already is. This societal separation, he says, he's not reading the quote, this societal separation is manifesting already. By now, you have kids who are seeking out pornography from the time that they are 5 to 8 years old. Imagine that. What this means to me is that I have a responsibility to conquer this behavior and to conquer myself to make society better and to rise above the social, interpersonal, and personal behavior that could contribute to the inevitable crashing down of the reality I want to create. Part of my legacy is conquering this behavior bit by bit, understanding it, understanding myself, understanding the strings being pulled behind the curtains in government, business, finance, society, everything that makes it so easy to fall into the grips of out-of-control sexual behavior. It's part of my mission to know everything that there is to know about how I got into my behavior and how to transition into a literal new life. My kids will need it, your kids will need it, society will need it. I plan to be on the right side of history. This purpose creates a much brighter and tangible result in my life that extends beyond myself and that helps me stay in a positive orientation towards correcting this behavior. Number 4, define your reboot early and often. If you're like me, your reboot started out defined as never acting out again. This definition felt like the only way to be successful. However, the more I actually did the work, the daily habits, the awareness practice, and dialoguing, the more I realized that my reboot definition needed some adjusting. Defining your reboot is about defining your motives and goals, taking action, and then adjusting your efforts and mindsets to allow your behavior to evolve. And guess what? you're going to slip during the process. That's actually a sign that you're headed in the right direction. You are pushing your boundaries. There is a balance to strike between having standards for yourself and being so strict that you are inevitably going to fail and build more of a sense of shame and failure around your efforts. Number 5, the role of religion in my reboot. If you are religious and do not want to challenge your current ideas around your own sexuality and morality, then perhaps just skip this part. My goal is not to persuade anybody to leave their faith or religious practice. However, if you are religious or were religious, this needs to be a central part of how you approach and understand this behavior. This is because the reboot is about understanding and connecting with all your deeply held beliefs. If you do not challenge them in all arenas, you are brushing a massive amount of power and understanding about your behavior under the rug. Just as with all things pertaining to your reboot and reboot capital, your beliefs and mindsets must change in order for you to move past this behavior. For some, this may look like viewing sexuality through a different lens. For others, it may look like a changing understanding of willpower, temptation, and the origin of sexual desire. For me, my religious upbringing was a principal contributor to my out-of-control behavior. And it's the same for the vast majority of men in my former religious community, including in my family and closest relationships in my community and church leadership. I was deeply involved in my religion for 24 years. I'm shocked at how much I progressed in my reboots the more I uprooted my false beliefs about myself and reality. And in doing this, I saw how much really came from my deeply held religious beliefs. When religious, I could point to countless scriptures, sermons, and personal experiences that showed how bad and evil my behavior and my desires were. And behind closed doors, I was engaging in behavior regularly that, on religious terms, is a crime beyond murder, quote unquote, beyond murder. My completely natural and personal desires were tainted with shame, fear, and secretive sadness. I rarely got to seriously look at my behavior as a symptom of something deep within myself, desiring change and healing, and instead looked at it as a temptation that the adversary was getting over me. And my job was to resist, fight, and hide my struggle from everyone. My human nature was ungodly and like a flame that would spread out of control and hurt me and those I loved if I didn't keep it under control and pushed it down. Ironically, believing any of this actually caused that flame to do exactly what I feared it would. My addict developed from needing to soothe myself from what was happening in my life or my family in a private way that wouldn't hurt anybody. It is clear that sexual shame is prominent in our human culture, and I don't think you can trace that anywhere better than to religious dogma. In fact, the more religious I got, and the more deliberately I acted to make everything outside myself perfect as opposed to looking within myself, the less I was really facing my beliefs with the world in a way that encourages learning and growth. Number 6, expressing your sexuality without shame. One of the greatest turning points was entering a relationship where I could openly express my desire for sex. More specifically, having a partner who wanted to fulfill my sexual desires and had them herself. More specifically, having a partner who wanted to help me fulfill my sexual desires and had them herself helped me understand I wasn't bad. I wasn't being tempted. I was just learning to express my desires and wants in a healthy way with someone who wanted to reciprocate that intimacy. I know many relationships are characterized by judgment, self-hatred, and inability to communicate emotionally. So I don't claim that just expressing what you want is a solution to all problems. But I will say that if you can't honestly tell your partner what you want sexually and be willing to give and reciprocate that intimacy, it can contribute significantly to acting out sexually. Number 7, leave room for new and personalized experiences or strategies. Leave room for things that will not necessarily fit the exact parameters you see in the resources and the calls within this program. Your situation is unique because you are a unique human. My guess is that you probably have something you think is weird or embarrassing or ridiculous, and you would rather ignore it than consider it a place where you can acknowledge how it will impact your reboot. Here is an example of something I thought sounded stupid, but was actually a unique part of my reboot. If I would have recognized this earlier and seen the data in it, instead of labeling myself as bad or lazy or dumb or whatever, I would have made progress sooner. When men have to poop, there is pressure placed on the prostrate. Pressure on the prostrate can lead to getting an erection simply from having to go number 2. Wild, but it's true. The same thing can happen when you have a full bladder. Because of my behavior, every time I got an erection, I would feel like I had to PMO, to use pornography, to masturbate, and to orgasm. Even if I didn't have anything else triggering it, just having an erection would do the trick and put me in addict mode. This is a great example of awareness being the key, not elimination of the behavior. In the past, I would just immediately go into the mode of, I am bad for having this urge, which inevitably led to coping mechanisms that led to acting out. Now I recognize the biological reason for it, and I can simply do my business without conflating it with needing to avoid a slip. These are my main takeaways and shares. Much love, your brother in this struggle, and he shares his name. Gentlemen, those of you who are listening and who listened thus far, thank you very much. I want you to know that when this man came in, he was using purely willpower. He came from a very religious background. He was certainly not in a relationship. The one thing he had going for him, that he was doing very well in his field of work, he was working really hard, and he was improving month after month, year after year. He was an ideal brother for this program because he was ambitious, he was high performing, he was trying to be perfect, but he was experiencing a lot of pain in other areas of his life. And you just heard him break down his experiences from this program in 2.5 years. He has grown in his life tremendously as a leader, a professional, a business owner. And a lot of that comes from the self-reflection and growth that comes from the rebooting process. I recommend that you give this a second listen. I don't know what you are hesitating for. I don't know what you're waiting for. This is a brother who saw that he needed help. He saw and he listened, he heard. The day he joined, I had put out a video on YouTube and he had commented on it. And I jump into my comments, I respond. I encourage you guys to send me emails based on podcasts. I actually personally respond to them. And we had a back and forth and I broke down a concept for him in detail in the YouTube comments. And a day later, I saw his name pop up as a client who had joined the program. And he came in and he put in the work. And now he is free. Many of you who are listening to this podcast have been listening to it for a very long time. You have not taken action. You are still slipping. You probably slipped the day before or today or this afternoon, or you will slip this evening, and you know that. Yet you are still not seeking professional help. I want you to understand that making the decision to reboot is going to blow your life wide open. Your spiritual life, your mental capacity, your emotional life, every aspect of you is going to be challenged and changed. And as scary as that might sound, that is what you need to get to the next level. You're wondering why you're stuck? Let me tell you this. That behavior, that compulsive behavior that you go to every time you feel stuck, it is the key to unlocking everything. I don't even know how the universe made it so beautiful and so perfect that the thing you go to deal with all your out-of-control behaviors, in the process of overcoming it, you will fix all your other issues in life, all the issues that led to it. It's a beautiful thing. So again, if you're waiting, if you're wondering, stop. Go ahead and use one of the links below this podcast episode. Click schedule a call. No, you can't just join us. You need to have a conversation with one of our Reboot strategists. We need to make sure that you're a good fit for the program. But that doesn't mean it's going to be a simple screening call. We also want to support you. We want to help you. We want to clarify some of the concepts as well to you. We don't know. Maybe you'll be ready to join our program in 2, 3, 4 years. I've told many people, years ago, people said, JK, you're not going to be around for the next few years. You're just some grifter who came along to blah, 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 blah. They just didn't believe it. And here I am, going on 13 years next year doing this. I am still going to be here. Now, granted, with inflation, with the level of my skill, and with the number of clients we have, it is going to get more expensive to join the program. My suggestion is become a part of it now. End this behavior and move on with your life. Do not let the shame, do not let that voice in your head saying like, yeah, I'll give it another go. I got this. Do not let this fucking stuck place you are. I know you're fucking stuck. I know you're apathetic and listening like, oh yeah, JK, I know what you're saying. I just can't do that. I won't make it to the call. I mean, whatever the fuck it is holding you back, you need to get it out of your way. You need to understand too that for some of you, this behavior is the very thing that is fucking with your executive function, which is handled by your prefrontal cortex. Some of you, outside of your routine activities that you have to do, wherein there is a consequence, like going to work, picking up the kids, being nice to your wife, aside from those routine things, you are incapable of doing a single thing to move yourself forward. And that is because of your out of control behavior. Stop waiting, schedule a call, and please give this entire episode another listen. Save it, download it. It is worth it.
I'm JK, your brother in this struggle. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Porn Reboot podcast. I'll speak to you later on in the week. If you found this episode helpful, here are 4 ways I can help you with your out of control sexual behavior for free. The first way is to grab a free copy of my book, Confessions of a Porn Addict, 7 Secrets of Porn-Free Men at elevatedrecovery.org, or visit the link in the description below this episode. The second way is, if you're not sure where to start, but you'd like to learn more about my team and I, if you'd like to spend time with like-minded professionals and business owners who are controlling their behavior, then join our free and confidential group, the Porn Reboot group on Facebook. There's a link to join in the description below this episode. The third way is if you need help right now because you have a burning issue, your behavior with pornography is hurting you mentally or emotionally, you're about to lose your relationship, you want to live up to your potential, be an authentic man, and free yourself from shame, guilt, and underachieving, then click on the link in the description below this episode that says free coaching call. And the fourth way is to leave us a 5-star review if you enjoy this podcast, so that we can reach more men who are struggling in silence and bring back the lessons we learn from coaching them to freedom.